Everybody says, oh, where the fuck's he at? He used to do that YouTube shit every day, 2-3 weeks. Nobody knows where the fuck he is. I'm right here. I'm right here, and I'm going to get back to it. I'm going to say this, though. I watched WrestleMania Backlash yesterday. And one of the things that I'm going to say is the show was regular. What do I mean by that? It's exactly what I thought of going in. It was going to be a show that was going to have good wrestling, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter. We got a lot of good title matches. This was actually, if you're a wrestling fan, for WWE standards, this was actually a better wrestling show than most of WWE shows that they put on. The thing with Cesaro is they got it right. I said exactly what needed to be done. I said, obviously, Cesaro doesn't win this match, but you make him look as strong as possible while Roman retains in the process. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about WrestleMania Backlash, and we're going to review it in full. And stay right. Bad, man. Just for whatever reason, I just could not get into it the way other people got into it. When you go back and watch the show, there's actually 2 editions to the show. I've experienced 1.5 so far. There's the drunk edition, and there's the sober edition. Everything drunk is that much better, but I'm not really one to drink like that. But regardless, WrestleMania Backlash. Let's talk about it. There were some good things about this show. Some very good things, and one of those things was wrestling. This show was great for wrestling. I felt like if you were one of those people that missed the old WWE wrestling and you missed what made wrestling special. Now, I'm not sitting here saying this was an iconic show that you have to go back and watch, because that's not what it was. But it was one of those shows where you had a lot of good wrestling. The Raw Women's Championship kicked the show off, but before I get to that, we'll talk about Sheamus and Ricochet. By the way, Ricochet is still employed in WWE. They continue to do absolutely nothing with him. And once again, it's just one of those guys where I just feel sympathy for, because he has so much potential, and they can't do much with him. And Sheamus, who has been on a roll in the last couple of months in WWE, obviously you have the feud with Matt Riddle, is now on the kickoff show fighting Ricochet. He did beat Ricochet. I will not dive into that match, but I'm just going to give that as a heads up for people going forward, that Sheamus did beat Ricochet on the kickoff show. But kicking off the main show was the Raw Women's Championship triple threat. And you know what the saddest part about all of this is that I actually had made a preview. I made a preview. And I filmed it. And I didn't edit it, and I didn't upload it. But I'll tell you this. What happened is what I said was going to happen. And that's not for brownie points. That's not for me to say, oh, I told it. Rhea Ripley, Asuka, Charlotte Flair. Now, if you actually sat and watched this match, you would have the idea that Charlotte Flair actually in this matchup, it was getting to a point where a point where I actually sat to myself and thought, is Charlotte Flair actually going to win this match? We all know how we feel about Charlotte Flair. We love the greatness that she brings and so on and so forth, but she does not need a championship. She's had enough. She's had many. And that's not me saying that, oh, Charlotte Flair is never going to hold a championship again. That's just me saying that it's not necessary right now. You had Rhea Ripley win the championship at WrestleMania. Now you have her defended against Asuka and Charlotte Flair. You want to protect Charlotte Flair at all costs, because that's the motto that WWE's had ever since she graced the ring with her presence. And you take Rhea Ripley and you have her pin Asuka to retain the championship, and that's what happened. Flair and Ripley squared it off early in this match. Asuka was able to give the champion the assist in trying to eliminate Flair from the equation. Flair came right back to take Ripley down. There was some chaos outside the ring. Flair then got a bit too frisky with Asuka, eating a flurry of strikes before being locked into a deep armbar. Flair went on late into this match. There was a Flair moonsault, because obviously there cannot be a Charlotte Flair match without a moonsault at the outside. Flair went to hit natural selection on both Asuka and Rhea Ripley simultaneously. And I thought for a minute, trying to pin both of them, that would have been a pretty cool way to end the match. But I figured at least one of them was going to kick out. Ripley tried to hit Asuka with a riptide. Asuka then countered it into an Asuka lock. Moments later, Ripley did manage to then hit Asuka with the riptide, and she retained the championship in a fast-paced opener. Rhea Ripley retains her Raw Women's Championship in a triple threat match against Asuka and Charlotte Flair. And like I said, this is what needed to happen. This was a pretty good match. The card for this show wasn't necessarily bad on paper, but you didn't know exactly what you were going to get out of it. But you did get a good opener And obviously, whenever they have, and I've noticed this, whenever they have the multi-woman matches with not to say that there's women talent that isn't good, God forbid, but whenever they have these multi-women matches, you tend to notice that they usually are all pretty good. This was no different. Rhea Ripley would retain her championship. We then get to another championship, and let me tell you this. It's the SmackDown Tag Team Championship between Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler, defending at the time against Rey and his son, Dominic Mysterio, the Mysterios. I think from a mile away, you kind of saw this coming. Rey and Dominic have had their pairing together. Rey has had his solo feud. Dominic has had his solo feud against Seth. So on and so forth. Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler are both very talented men, but they've done absolutely nothing with these SmackDown Tag Team Championships. I think there was a stat line that I saw the other day that they've only defended them twice since winning them in the beginning of the year. That just goes to show you that, you know, Dolph Ziggler has been a guy for many years that they have had no direction with. Same thing with Robert Roode. The second he came up from NXT, he was just irrelevant as possible. But nonetheless, these four individuals were mixing it up in SmackDown tag action. Roode and Ziggler actually attacked, and he injured Dominic backstage during the kickoff show. That's an important thing to mention for all three of you listening to this that watched the kickoff show. Before the match, Rey and Dominic were in the trainer's room, obviously checking out Dominic, seeming that he's unable to compete in this match. That left Rey to get dominated. Obviously, 2-on-1 handicap match is not going to go into your favor. Roode and Ziggler were focusing their attack on Mysterio's left leg, trying to ground the high flyer. Roode and Ziggler's dominance continued all over the count. Double DDT, a great run of offense, and unsurprisingly, at some point, we did see Dominic come back to the ring. Obviously, what usually happens in situations like this is the team double teams the one guy, beats the living crap out of him, and just when you think that it's over, to our surprise, the pre-injured man makes his way back to the ring and finds himself back in the action. And that's what happened. Came back to the ring. He was holding his ribs, selling his injury. To cheer on his dad, Rey hit a top rope bulldog and hesitated to tag Dominic in. Dominic took the initiative to tag himself in. Things did not work well as he was receiving an end of a beating until laying out Ziggler with a super kick and making the hot tag right back to Rey Mysterio. Rey hit Roode with a 619, tagged in Dominic, who finished things off with a frog splash that it's getting there, but it's not quite there yet, and it looks a little rusty. But Rey and Dominic are the first father and son duo to hold tag team gold. Rey's a generational talent, and obviously his son is working his way up the ranks as well. So the Mysterios win the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Good for them. Give them a nice run. I've said this is way ahead of time, and a lot of other people have said this to me. Obviously, Father Time is knocking on Rey Mysterio's door, and at some point, within probably the next year, he's going to call it a career. The best possible thing that I think WWE could ever do is have, towards next year's WrestleMania season, have Dominic turn heel on Rey Mysterio, have a feud, have Rey versus his son at WrestleMania, and you have Dominic win, and you have him retire his father, Rey Mysterio. I don't think there's anybody in the world that should even have anything remotely close to Rey Mysterio's last match, especially on the grandest stage of them all. If Rey Mysterio decides at that time that he's ready to retire, I don't know. Like I said, Rey Mysterio's been on a little bit of a run. There's been some importance to it, but again, he is much older. He's had his history with injuries, but that is just something that I would like to put out there on that case. Then we get to probably CBS Sports gives this an F-. If I could give it a lower grade than that, I probably would. Damian Priest versus The Miz. I completely forgot that this was, I forgot it was a lumberjack match, but then you figure, okay, lumberjack match. Not only was it a lumberjack match, the entire match was centered around building towards Batista's new movie, Army of the Dead. And while the concept was cool, it was actually lumberjacks that were all zombies. And again, it was cool looking, but the way it played out on television was absolutely terrible. The match was garbage. The fighting against the zombie, I don't know. You would have to watch it to develop your own opinion, but man, this was really bad. Before the match, Morrison went to the locker room where the Lumberjacks were waiting. When Morrison opened the door, he found that the Lumberjacks were zombies. Crossover marketing, obviously, for Army of the Dead movie that's coming up. It led Damian Priest and The Miz alternating between fighting the zombies and each other. Morrison attempted to interfere, but was quickly pulled away by the zombies over the barricade. Priest won after using Hit the Lights to score the pinfall. Miz was then eaten by zombies as Priest posed and the Army of the Dead graphic appeared in what CBS Sports rates WWE's lowest moment in the past decade. Yeah, this was absolutely garbage. There was no wrestling here. Very cringy, very unexciting, and just very... This is something like this is just... and I give them the A for effort. I understand the marketing aspect of it, but, you know, what are you going to do? We continue to go to another championship match. That's the SmackDown Women's Championship match between Bianca Belair and Bayley. One of the things we want to talk about here is obviously Bianca. After Bayley, I don't really know what the long-term plan is. The SmackDown Women's division is not necessarily as deep as it could have been. You have Naomi, you could continue with Bayley, and then Sasha could reappear at some point. But, you know, Bianca is obviously what I'm assuming will probably be the champion come run through SummerSlam. You know, it is what it is. Actions going in and around, shoulder tackles, all of this. Bianca was on fire in the beginning of this match. Bayley was finally able to slow Belair down. She used the rear chinlock to try and ground Belair and take the match to an area where the two were on somewhat even footing. The action again went to the outside. Bayley found some significant success dropping Belair on the ring steps and suplexing her onto the ground to set up a 2 count. Bayley kept up the pressure, alternating between attacking and taunting the Rookie, supposedly. The only serve to fire Belair up. She then regained momentum. Bayley followed up by using Belair's braid as a ripcord to pull her into the Bayley to belly. I love all of the creativity that has been used with something so simple as Bianca Belair's hair. Bayley followed it up with that. Unfortunately, Belair lost her grip on the hair, and the pin didn't look good as it should. Still, this was very solid. The finish came in an awkward sequence where Belair wrapped her braid around Bayley's leg to aid with the pin. Well, this was definitely a bounce back from the disaster that was the Zombie Jack match that happened a little bit before that. Bianca Belair retains her title. And again, you can say what you want. I think Bayley was probably capable of a little bit more here. But for what it was worth, Belair does retain. And we now get to the co-main event of the evening. Main event of the evening. And that's the triple threat match for the world title. Going into this, I kind of saw what was coming before it came. This wasn't going to be a wrestling match. It was going to be a brawl. It was going to be outside the ring. There was going to be fire. There was going to be electric explosions. There was going to be lightning explosions, pyro, just table spots, because that's what you do. When you have 3 big guys, you don't traditionally expect a war of a triple threat match. You expect a lot of high spots, because the high spots take you away from the fact that it's not really wrestling, but it keeps it entertaining at the same time. We had Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman. Strowman went at both opponents immediately, led McIntyre and Lashley to form an alliance, obviously working against the bigger man. They tried to suplex Strowman, didn't work. The alliance wouldn't last long. Lashley and McIntyre began to brawl, and it led Strowman to hitting a dive off the ring apron onto both men. Strowman would take advantage of the lack of DQs to take out Lashley using the ring steps. McIntyre and Lashley battled up the entrance ramp before McIntyre threw Lashley to the LED boards. As Strowman and McIntyre battled back in the ring, McIntyre hit Strowman with a massive Michinoku driver to a near fall. The impressive feat of strength in the match. McIntyre tried to Claymore outside the ring but was caught by Strowman, who then hit a powerbomb through the announce table. Back in the ring, McIntyre hit Strowman with a Claymore, but before he could capitalize, Lashley ran back in, threw McIntyre, hit Strowman with a spear, and got the win. Pure chaos from start to finish. 3 big men. Not bad match. Not a bad match. Again, not wrestling, but not by any means a bad match, I guess, if you're into this type of style. It's like a Goldberg match, you know, or Brock Lesnar. I mean, Brock Lesnar can actually wrestle, but well, Brock Lesnar doesn't really wrestle anymore. He's more of a powerhouse guy. I don't see Brock Lesnar doing chokeholds. But yeah, regardless, nonetheless, it was what it was. Lashley, obviously, you know, Drew gets screwed at the finish there, gets his finisher. Lashley takes him off, hits his, and gets the win. Obviously, Drew was not going to eat a pinfall going forward. What a lot of people are saying, and I'm going to watch it again because maybe it was a lot better than I thought it was. A lot of people are saying is a match of the year candidate up to thus far is Roman Reigns and Cesaro for the Universal Championship. Roman Reigns obviously has been the hottest thing in all the wrestling over the last 7-8 months. And then Cesaro has been a guy who's just been great at what he does and has never really been put into that main event scene to really thrive. Back and forth, Roman Reigns, strong early, looking very dominant. Threw Cesaro from the ring, damaged the challenger's arm. Roman Reigns' dominance went on. Cesaro eventually fired back up. He had a series of uppercuts and a big boot for a near fall before softening up Reigns. Reigns tried to continue going at Cesaro's bad arm, the challenger trying desperately to fight back as Reigns kept up the pressure. Despite the bad arm, Cesaro began to unload with clotheslines and uppercuts, putting Reigns back on the defensive before hitting a huge suplex for another near fall. Cesaro's injured arm played throughout the match, gave out. He was trying to hit the neutralizer on Roman Reigns as springboard uppercut was met by a Superman punch, another near fall. Spear attempt was met by an uppercut, but an attempt at a pop-up uppercut failed when Cesaro's arm gave out again. So obviously, a lot of this match is centered around Cesaro's injured arm and not being able to do what he needs to do. Roman Reigns again locked in the guillotine. Cesaro nearly slammed his way out again. What happened the first time the guillotine was locked in is that Cesaro displayed his strength. Cesaro lifted him up with his neck, and again, for any of you that know that, to have that type of neck muscles to lift a grown man that's over 200 pounds that's impressive. But again, he was locked in the guillotine. Cesaro was almost to escape it a second time, but he got pulled right back in. Cesaro continued to fight it, but eventually, obviously, was choked out. And Roman Reigns retained the Universal Championship via, I guess you could say submission, even though there wasn't a tap out. Jey Uso ran to the ring after the match, continued to attack on Cesaro. Seth Rollins then came to the ring to join in, throwing Cesaro around and attacking his injured arm before hitting Cesaro with a chair, ending the show celebrating in the center of the ring. I don't know what goes from here. If they continue the Roman Reigns and Cesaro match, again, very, very good match. Obviously, Roman Reigns looks like he's transitioned towards not only having a spear, but having a more diverse moveset. The guillotine fits him completely. That's that. And that's the show. Again, the wrestling was good. But going into the show, a lot of people just, it's hard to get into the post-WrestleMania show because it's like a drop-off of dopamine. You go from WrestleMania to boom, right back down. And that's what it is, folks. Now, we have the NBA playoffs coming up. We're going to try to do a preview. We do have a My Pick for the NBA awards. Maybe going to hit some gaming soon, but I do have to stay consistent and stay on top of it more. But I appreciate everybody for watching, as always, and continue to stay safe.